All right, everybody, hello, and welcome back to In Liberty and Health. I know in the chat I said that we were having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I believe we got everything figured out. Actually, I know we have everything figured out because I have a great guest for you guys today, and I know I've been kind of hitting this 9/11 stuff a lot lately, but I think it's important, and I think these guys always have the right angle on pretty much everything, and um, I did that show a couple weeks ago with Sean on the Great Litmus Test, which is 9/11, as our guest today had coined it. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. But I don't want to keep you guys too long in this portion of the show talking about that because we're going to get into this. And the topic today, I'm very, very excited to talk about all the people surrounding 9/11. So not necessarily just 9/11, but going into some of the personalities that kind of came out of it and how they kind of blew up after that. So make sure you get all the links below to where you could find my guest because he did 3 films and he has a 4th one in the wings. So make sure you go check that out. I haven't got to check that one out yet, but I do have the link, so I'm super excited to check that out. Go to tigerfitness.com through the link below to get all your supplements, all that good stuff, pre-workout, multivitamins, branched chain amino acids, electrolytes, you name it, it's all there. And obviously Fox & Sons Coffee, who brings you the Sunday streams where I drink coffee and we just shoot the shit about anything and everything. So without further ado, I will get us out of this portion of the show and we will rock and roll right into it. What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovic. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody, welcome back and say hello to my dear friend, DJ Thermal Detonator, or Nelson.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right. Just kind of just another day here, kind of cloudy and just busy work, doing I've been writing work, working on a book with Sean Russell, and just trying to keep up things with my Patreons, and that's about it.
Nice, man. Yeah, I got it. So why don't you let everybody know kind of what you do and what people would know you for?
Well, people would probably, I think a larger amount of people maybe know me like from music scene, because I was very much into goth industrial DJ in LA, like after the millennium. Well, actually late 90s I started, but I did for quite a long time. And I had a pretty big profile on MySpace when MySpace was the thing, but then, I had a bit of tragedy in my family. Had my sister pass away in 2006, and a lot of things like changed, and then kind of lost my job. And then once upon a time, I just ran into loose change and started getting into that whole thing of conspiracy theories and stuff. But, over so many years and discovering other theories out there, and, eventually reading books, especially stuff from Michael Collins Piper, I started to, obviously the Mossad Israeli angle really took over everything. I'm like, I started to realize there's just too much junk out there, and this stuff made sense, especially if you were just going to focus on the demolition angle with the explosives. Like, here you got an incident where these guys van test positive for explosives, and then you have architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth ignoring all of that and telling you about nanothermite, and military grade nonsense that they can't prove and they think they found. And I'm like, and you guys don't want to talk about that, and you want to, in actuality, it's like, my suspicions with 9/11 probably, it started before 2007, really. I could even, I tell people all the time, like, despite that I disavow certain beliefs of Michael Moore, I still tell people, you still should see Fahrenheit 9/11 to see the progression of conspiracy theories already starting from there, even though that was mainstream and theatrical. So I'd actually saw that in 2004, and I was really suspicious of just the Bush administration and like, where they have some kind of business relationship with the Saudis and the Bin Laden family. I'm like, this don't look good, and just how the laws that were put in there, the Patriot Act and all that. So I had a little bit of that before already getting into loose change and the unfortunate InfoWars thing. But here's the thing with all that, and this is what's important, is like in 2007 when I saw loose change, and I was just like disturbed by it, and I saw Zeitgeist right after that, that had come out, but I wanted a solution to all this, and yes, Ron Paul was running, and one of my former DJs, believe it or not, was like, you heard about Ron Paul? I'm like, these are very liberal people, mind you. It's like I have friends that they were drag, I have gay friends and stuff, but so they were all supportive of him. So it was just like, wow. And then after like seeing all the stuff that he was saying about foreign policy, I was going to all the rallies. I went to like in front of the debates and stuff. You could just tell the culture of people. Mostly everybody there was just supporting Ron Paul. The other Republican candidates, they weren't there. So in that whole crowd is also where I've also found out about other 9/11 truth films, and kind of then I eventually drifted off and went into We Are Change LA, and then once Ron Paul was done, I got hooked onto the whole InfoWars thing and Alex Jones, and thank God I got off that crap in 2012. Once I didn't like the way things were going there, and I was already suspicious because of the incident that happened at the Austin gun rally. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it was kind of a known thing. Even Mark Dice had made a film about it afterwards when he had a falling out. Then he just kind of just ambushed this whole gun rally thing, and made he was just acting like a provocateur. It was just really, really obvious. So I got really suspicious then. So those last 2 years of me listening to him, I was being very careful, and like the way that he even handled himself throughout the campaign run. He was running. Alex Jones was running money bombs the same day that Ron Paul was running money bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the way he was covering certain things, it was just very two-sided. It seemed like he was kind of benefiting Romney. Was kind of very just strongly like focusing on like just jabbing at Obama, and like less with Romney, but like not really pushing Ron Paul very much the campaign. And then like I got upset about the whole thing with when Rand went endorsed Romney and then all that other stuff. But then now that I look now years later, I kind of understand now like why it's politics. So it's like I understand it may not have been good with the whole family and all that, but in the long run now it's like I voted for Trump. I mean I don't hide that either. So it's like I'm still disappointed with everything that's happened since, and I expected a little bit truth transparency, since I felt, here's your opportunity, all you 9/11 truthers, the heads, all the guards, to do something about it. Here's some transparency. You'll see it much more clearer in my part 4 film. I really get into this, and that's what's part of this, that's part of the discussion there with this new film series is like, look, the guy went out there. Yeah, he's dog whistling to you, but take the fucking, respond.
Right.
It's like do something. Don't jump on all. Don't jump on all the culture war bandwagon and stuff. We're still at war with all these, these countries. We're still overseas. Trump isn't yanking us all out of those countries completely. Yeah, he may have may have been better around Syria and all that stuff, but Yemen, and then my God, lots of other things. So, that's in the course of where I've come to at this, in this stage. But, with 9/11, it's like, it's there's a lot to talk about as far as where I'm at now, why I'm not into this whole inside job, I'm not in this self-inflicted wound theory, And one of the other things I also will want to talk about is the Oklahoma City bombing. I researched that a lot too, just as much. 1993 World Trade Center bombing is probably even heavier, much more deeper research, probably anybody else you'll find in the movement. I mean, that might be bragging, but seriously, there hasn't been anybody who's put that much work just within 1993. So I cover all three of those areas. I don't separate that, but the truth movement separates that, and there's a problem with that. It's like they're all unresolved. And that's what I'm here to talk about.
Yeah, well, one thing that our friend Sean Russell had mentioned that you had coined the great litmus test when it came to 9/11, and I kind of brought it up in the intro to the show. But like when you see people get goofy on that, then like for me, my specialty is more like foreign policy when it comes to China and the Indo-Pacific. And you can always kind of see like they'll say some goofy stuff about 9/11 and then they believe all the propaganda about China. And Alex Jones is the perfect epitome of this. And it's because, like you said, the Chi-coms and, instead of going after Obama or instead of going after Romney to bring up Paul, what'd he do? He basically threw, the real, in my opinion, the real right wing to the side for establishment politics, for this guy who's supposed to be this conspiracy theory, this nut who's so far off the reservation. But for some reason, the longer he's been back on Twitter, the more it's like, oh, this dude's just like your regular old Republican at this point. Like, he'll sit there and say bad stuff about Trump, but like, they don't disagree on anything at this point. Like, there's no meaningful pushback from him. And he's supposed to be the guy that kind of like holds true and, speaks truth to power. But he only speaks truth to power to one side, not both.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate. I don't like that it's like shaping this whole like I don't like this new republicanism, whatever this is. It's like it does seem borrowed completely from Jones itself. It does seem like he has influence, mostly through maybe my generation, and then obviously younger. He's Jones is only a year younger than me. And it's scary. It's like I have to even agree with people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher was saying recently, like, can we go back to the way it used to be? When Republicans weren't the ones, going out there partying, and debauchery and all this other stuff. And now that's being accepted, it's like now that the left is all uptight and all that. Can't we just go back to what it was? It's like, kind of agree with them on that, and it's like Jones is part of all that. I mean, he's pushed all that. He's a pervert. He's worse, in so many ways. And, it's from the Ron Paul movement. It's like I believe that they saw that he helped Ron Paul elevate. He got helped him get popular. And that's what the Trump that Trump needed that support, obviously. And Republicans weren't getting in the mainstream media through the mainstream course. They were not getting the support, and they were always inflating their numbers and their polls, and it's just this whole artificial popularity. It's just like what I was just saying earlier when I started getting into it in 2007, 2008, going to his campaigns. You could see everybody was there for Ron Paul. Where was the God? What was the other guys that were running?
McCain
and Romney, but was the other guy? The Georgia Congressman Huckabee, Mike Huckabee.
Mike Huckabee, yeah.
Everybody's there for Huckabee. Everybody's there for Ron Paul, and then there's maybe 12 people for Huckabee and 4 for Romney, and there was one person for McCain, and McCain ended up getting the nominee. It was hilarious, So yeah. Oh my God, I'm kind of losing thought now, losing track. But what were we talking
That's okay.
about?
We were kind of going on Alex Jones, and basically now, he kind of just toes the mainstream Republican line. And if there's something that drives me nuts, it is just these purely partisan politics. And I get it. People say, "Oh yeah, well that's politics. You got to play." No, for me, I think we should just unabashedly tell the truth about all things and let the chips fall where they may. Well, and if you want to support the Republican Party, okay, but don't be afraid to punch them when they're wrong. Praise them when they're good. I have no no problem saying Trump did some good stuff. Like, nobody should. But to
Yeah.
just blindly follow Trump and not be objective about how he was, that shit drives me nuts. Once again, you should have one objective standard how you assess all politicians. It shouldn't be this partisan game where, oh, well, I'm not going to criticize him on Israel or the Middle East or foreign policy because he's a Republican and I like him. No, if he's bad, he's bad. If he's not, he's not. It's that simple.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, yeah, you can totally see it now. He's very one-sided. It's like, he'll point out somebody being a Zionist or, or Israeli first or whatever, if they're a Democrat, if they're a liberal.
Right.
He won't, you could totally see that. And it's what's really odd about all that is like, the whole thing all started. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Jones got popular because of 9/11 truth. I mean, that, if 9/11 hadn't happened, Alex Jones would not be the person that he is right now, period. And you can thank social media, you can thank MySpace and all that, all of that circulating his films. But the thing about that throughout that whole era, it seemed very neutral because look at the kind of people he used to bring on. He bring on a lot of people on the left, a lot of liberals. Now those people don't even go on there. They completely disavow him. But he used that for forever to push this whole cult, I guess, narrative, with 9/11 truth and that, I'm not partisan. I'm not any of that. But then, you start to notice little things, it's like, as soon as like the big thing that I had noticed is like, yeah, people point out that the only time he mentioned Israel having fingerprints on 9/11, it was him, arguing and upset that Obama won. And then it was in reference to Rahm Emanuel being picked out as one of his staffers. So, whoa, now you're saying it now, but you're not really even pointing it out throughout the whole course of the Bush years.
Right. Well, you had pointed this out to me once before, and it made sense because I remember a few months back, Jones had said, "Oh, well, they're going to drag us in, or Iran's going to drag us into a war or something like that." And he got bodied, like he got completely ratioed. They're like, "Dude, that's Israel trying to drag us into a war." And then I remember I was like, "Why does he always toe the Zionist line?" And he's done this, as far as I understand, for a very, very long time. And then you're like, "Oh, he only does this when Democrats are in charge." I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is like what I had noticed, like the day after Obama won the second term. Romney lost, right? And he was just going on and on and on of like, that basically that Romney still would have been better. He was saying that, so it's like, you probably actually voted for him, And then like a week later, he repeats the bullshit that fucking Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. Once he said that, I've said, fuck you. I was like, no more, never. Stopped him completely listening right after that, right after the election, like a week or two. Yeah. Stopped completely. And the only time I turned it, and I've heard a few times for a few interviews, like I was curious, like I won't say which ones, but there was one time I turned it on like maybe a few years ago because there was somebody who was interviewing that I knew was going to outsmart him, and he did. Mm-hmm. But the only time I turned it on from 2012, from that point, was on December 12th. And it was just a dare to say to myself, I bet you this motherfucker is going to start saying this is the shooting's fucking fake at this school shooting I'm seeing on the news right now, which was Sandy Hook. So it's 9 o'clock over in the morning. And what is he doing? He's covering fucking Sandy Hook, telling everybody it's a fucking hoax. So I'm like, I was just for 5 minutes, I just turned it on. I'm like, obvious. And and I couldn't believe what happened the following year because as soon as 2013, it just started taking off, and he made an ass of himself on Pierce Morgan. That's what really freaked me out when he's like 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Mm-hmm. When he did that shit, dude. And it was funny because even Michael Collins Piper had said this. It's like everybody who had ever been associated, who ever did anything, spread his his links, whatever, bought his films, called in or whatever, everybody suddenly became afraid. They're like, holy shit, don't associate me with this guy. This guy's fucking nuts, And I even remember, Paul Joseph Watson. He was my friend on Facebook, and I'm like, I even remarked to him, I'm like, you think this is good? You think this is him having a Howard Beale moment, from the movie The Network, the 1976 movie The Network? He thought it was him having his Howard Beale. Like, no, this is not a Howard Beale moment, dude. No. And of course, look what happened to Paul Joseph Watson. Now he's completely left, and he was probably the only good guy that actually worked for him, believe it or not. So, yeah, and it's like I've been vindicated ever since that point. It's like I told people, and I ended up getting a friend of mine who got completely addicted to him, and still kept listening to him, buying all his goddamn energy stuff, and like. Actually, he passed away a month ago. So drinking, kind of just got depressed, and he was really, really still caught up on all that stuff. And I tried to break him out of that. I tried to break him out of that spill. I tried to, buy a 9/11 litmus test. I'm like, look what he said about it back then. Look what the truth is now. Look what he avoids. And wasn't having it. He was just became his guru. He didn't care like that. I guess it was just more of the hatred of Obama. That's. I'm like, it's like, yeah, I mean, hate him for his foreign policy and all that, but there was just too much. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't like Obama either, but
yeah, no, I don't think I don't think most of the listeners, I definitely didn't. So when it comes to the whole inside job thing, because I think this is kind of the line that a lot of people take, like, I would say the vast majority of my right-wing friends, and I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable, but I think it's wrong to say, oh yeah, it was just an inside job, and just brush it off from there. So what do you think about people who say, it was an inside job, and why do you think that's bullshit?
Oh, you mean like why do I think it's bullshit to say it's an inside job?
Well, yeah. So what do you think about people, or when people say 9/11's an inside job?
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, if you think it's that, why aren't you part of the movement? Why aren't you doing anything? I'm like, you just going to let the government get away with 3,000 deaths and just carry on this narrative? They can just keep going around the world and everything, and just be everywhere. I'm like, you're full of shit. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, and if it was so, why did we get a conspiracy theorist president in office? Right. How did that happen? Mm-hmm. It's like, obviously it's not. Obviously you've been fed a lot of bullshit. I mean, it's like, oh, who put all the bombs in the buildings? Maybe foreigners did. Mm. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever think that maybe even Arabs did too as well? There is some circumstantial evidence for it. That's why I have to show them my stuff. I can't even, I can't reference another researcher.
So yeah,
for me, or I'd like to be. It would be easier for me. But I don't,
So yeah, when it comes to some of that proof, I think it was your first documentary that you did that kind of detailed out. I may get some of these mistakes wrong, so please correct me if I do get them wrong. But the urban moving systems van that had traces of explosives in it.
Yeah.
There was a lot in that film, and like I said, I'm pretty shady on the details. And
Sure.
if I remember correctly, I think it started with a news anchor who reported it after they were detained 6 hours later. So elaborate on the whole urban moving systems with the van and the trace of explosives.
Well, the basically to answer it for people, when people see the news reports of a van packed with explosives on the George Washington Bridge, mm-hmm. that is misreporting on the arrest of the dancing Israelis. They were not near the George Washington Bridge, but they were near a river bridge. But the part of the bolo, the beyond the lookout, is the reason why there was so much adamant to go after urban moving systems isn't just because of the 3 dancing Israelis at Doric Towers. Yeah, that's all important. There's a lot of details that come out of there from the people that live in the apartment. But what actually drove it even more so is really the Liberty State Park incident, where there's 2 other Israelis in another urban moving system vehicle. Because they were next to the water, and knowing that the 1993 attack was to target the bridges and tunnels, the George Washington Bridge included, even though Ryan Dawson doesn't want to admit this, he doesn't include this in his film, but that's what he just talks about the Holland Tunnel. And those were all targets, all the 5 tunnelways, bridges into Manhattan. So people saw that, law enforcement thought, these guys are cheering or whatever. And they thought they're Middle Eastern, Mm-hmm. There was a suspicion that they were supposed to drive out to the bridge because they were so close to the water. So that was all part of the bolo. This, these guys might have explosives. These guys, so they get pulled over, and it basically Marsha Kramer from CBS 2, she's not getting all her information correctly. She knows that there's an arrest, and basically she is using whatever she had heard from, echoes of the bolo, that they were targeting the George Washington Bridge, but at the same time, it may have also been echoes from the officers like, hey, we're pulling them over. They're getting closer to the river bridge, which is in the Meadowlands. And that's why what's key is when you hear the George Washington Bridge report, it's completely, they say it's in the Meadowlands near the GWB. The GWB is not near the Meadowlands. So the Meadowlands is the sports arena, by the hotel, by all that. That's the pullover scene of the Dancing Israelis. So I basically, I got that straight. I eliminated basically what I call, moving vans running wild theory. That there are all these different moving, like, no, there are moving vans going around there. They're important. There's even one going in Massachusetts. There's one that's going into Ohio and then into Chicago, basically. But this, that's what that basically is. So from the George Washington Bridge report, because you remember by the evening it started saying this didn't happen. You go to the morning press conferences and you see that, they're already asking like, well, what happened with those arrests? And, they didn't want to give no answer, but we started getting the answers because they started to appear in the Paulo Lima report for the Jersey Record, and they basically, that's what drove Paulo Lima to get to the bottom of all that, like how do you mess up on, misreport on something like that? And that's how we got the story of the Dancing Israelis.
Huh. All right. So then what do you think about people when they say Israel did 9/11? I think there's an angle to that, but much like Sean said, let me make sure I pull up his comment. Inside job is incomplete and misleading. I feel similar about saying Israel did 9/11. So you kind of laid out a little bit there about how there is some potential Israeli involvement and how people can kind of get tripped up on it, but kind of expand on that.
Oh, you mean like the theory that just Israel's behind it?
Yes.
Well, that's bullshit. People have that insinuation from the fact of that they've added hoaxes to the theory, to the conspiracy, and the hoaxes are that none of the planes are actually hijacked, or that none of them really even crashed. So if you eliminate that, they have, just like, well, it could be, whatever, the Israelis with the American government, they're also supportive. Like, no, that's not what happens. The CIA are not in cahoots with the Mossad. Sorry, just not true. The Mossad has actually tried to assassinate George H.W. Bush by arranging some Palestinians. So obviously, Israel knows how to manipulate and move Arabs around the world, and whether they're fundamentalist or secular or whatnot. And they've been doing that for a long time. Even before the trend of Islamic terrorism came about into the early 90s and late 80s. They've been doing that for a long time. So it's not to say that's all Israel. It's obviously going to be other, Arab states that are allies with them. Some of their allies that we may not even know that they're actual allies because they're actually very quiet and they play a game that they're at odds with each other. But then, you have the obvious relationships with, like, obviously Saudi Arabia. They're pretty cool with each other. They have embassies for each, so something's going on there. I wouldn't necessarily say it would be Egypt because I don't think Egypt, the government would, but you never know. There could be fundamentalists within there that, that collaborated, or especially throughout the country of Sudan, because that seems to be the country that Egypt would do their dirty work through anyways. And we have Pakistan involved too. So, and that's not necessary. There's not necessarily like a perfect relationship between Israel and Pakistan, but through the other Arab states, yet there is. So that's and then I also implicate Morocco. People say, well, why that? I'm like, God. Let's see. There's a lot of Jewish control in Morocco. There is a lot of the Israeli population is consistent with a lot of Moroccan Jews. There's obviously the Arabs that already live there. So you have that. You also have previous French rule. Morocco's has a lot of rich history too. So, my God, go look at the Hamburg cell. Most of the Hamburg cell are Moroccans. And they're part of it all goes back into a whole other thing with there is a fundamentalist movement that wants to reconquer there is. And quite frankly, Israel has no problem with that, something like that happening, because I do think in the long run, they hate Europe. They hate the United States. I do think that's true, they're just there to keep the wars going, and as long as they just keep themselves relevant and says, hey, just don't look at us. We're just trying to take larger chunks of Iraq, there is. I believe in the Greater Israel conspiracy. Yes, I believe that that's what they're trying to obtain, with destabilizing the region. Yeah, absolutely. So that's
I think what you're getting at there also is that, like, because of all that doesn't mean that Israel did it. They may have benefited, but like point A doesn't go straight to point B. Like, there's still lots of nuance in between here. Sean had commented, just like Palestinian terror, if Alex Jones didn't exist, they would have created Alex Jones. So and this goes to a concept that my dear friend Nuke here would be familiar with, where basically the saying goes, if I remember correctly, if it wasn't the Xbox, it would be something else. So basically, like, someone or something was always going to pop up to basically destroy a movement, or to basically make everybody look like shit by default. So, like, once again, Palestinian terror gives the IDF reason to go in there and slaughter Palestinians indiscriminately, while, like, there is that grain of truth that, like, Hamas does some really, really bad stuff, but they need that grain of truth to say, okay, well, that justifies us destroying 90% of the infrastructure in Gaza. They need that.
We all know that Hamas was created, right, from but as the counterbalance against the PLO, Israel really hates they really hate the PLO. They really hate, those groups. But what had happened before there was Hamas, Israel was supporting some of the different sub PLO groups that were against Arafat and others. So that's what kind of happened. And then eventually, I believe that's what, they took the fundamentalist angle, and then eventually we ended up getting Hamas. So, that's it's their fault. It's like that, they pushed this whole thing as far as an international system because they displaced the Palestinians. They made up, they had nowhere to go. A lot of them, where did they go to? Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Libya. And then Libya, there was a little bit back and forth. And Gaddafi even kicked them out, like sometime in the 80s, But where else were they? They were all in Europe and some in America. And, what do they get? What happens is they end up getting handled and pushed by others. Sometimes there's Israeli hands, sometimes there isn't. But, you just need to control the leaders. That's all you really need to do. And that's a whole other, I can't get into that one because that's for my Patreons.
So
Sean knows all about it. Sean's helping me with that stuff too. So
nice. He sent me a few DMs with some of the stuff that he's dug up in Israeli history, and it's very, very interesting. And like, I get why people get freaked out about that little country over there in the Middle East, because, like, a lot of fucky stuff goes on, but you can't lose the plot. Because when you start, screaming Jews control the world, then it's like, all right, well, we're getting a little off the reservation. We're getting carried away. I understand why people want to do that, but you have to stay in reality, and you can't just throw your hands up and start screaming about the Jays everywhere, because that people you're just going to turn people off.
I mean, like, I'm not going to deny that. There is a Jewish hegemony or a monopoly on certain things, media and certain things. But when Israel do their crimes, does not mean that they're already doing everything in concert with all their Jewish brethren, if they consider it their brethren or whatever, in different countries. When if Jewish people are to come across and then find out about Israeli crimes, they're going to be pressured to shut up about it. That doesn't mean they're part of the conspiracy, So that's why I want people to also understand too. So it's like they're under pressure by their own culture. They're under pressure by the lobbies or whatnot. So that's also, but serious. That's the thing. That's why Israel has the chutzpah to do the stuff that they do, because they know they've got so many people in positions of power like that. But that doesn't mean it's an entire pre-planned web. It's like it's impossible to believe that when you find a trail of Arab terrorism, and that's key, because Arab terrorism is before Islamic terrorism. So in Zionism, we know it's just a Jewish thing. It's Arabs. There are other Arabs that want. There are Christian Zionists. There's and that's their support too. So they need all that. What the thing is that yes, Israel relies on the whole public stage. The publicity. They rely on all of that, and they're always adamant that they give themselves a good image. They don't want a negative image ever. Right.
Yeah, so kind of moving on from there, elaborate on some of the angles from the, why don't we do the three that you mentioned there? So the OKC bombing, the World Trade Center bombing, and then kind of how those link up to 9/11, why you think they should be clustered together.
Well, if you're starting from 1993, there's already the situation there. I mean, look, they used a Ryder truck and they used explosives, to blow up the building. That's there's something there going on. And like, despite that, it is, Timothy McVeigh that gets blamed. Secondly, it's like, the John Doe number 2. Yeah, it's likely that Iraqi, Husseini al-Husseini, although some people try to say that it is, what's his name? Andreas Straussmer, which it doesn't look like him because he's much more light complected. He's German and all that.
Yeah.
So it's likely this Iraqi, but this Iraqi is not a fundamentalist. Why is he even there? What's the whole situation going on there? It takes a long time. It obviously takes a lot to explain because there's a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of other rumors. There's a lot of other players. There's also supposed to be other targets. Besides that, they were planning to target other cities, and they didn't. Obviously, that didn't fall through. They ended up doing it for that specific day, and a lot of people think that it has to do, basically for Waco. Really, it has more to do with Richard Wayne Snell. I mean, the guy that was being executed.
Yeah. So the weirdest part of the whole OKC bombing to me. I had Jose Galisan on the show. Geez, it was probably like a year and a half ago now. And we talked a little bit about we mostly talked about the OKC bombing. And the weirdest thing about that was the ATF, like all the employees were scheduled to be out of the building that day, which is just really, really weird. And then who was it? It was Terrence Yeeke, who was the cop that was on the scene. And he was injured, but when he was in the hospital, he said, like, nothing that they're telling you is what's actually going on. And then he mysteriously died afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if like he was killed because of that, because look, cops are fucking dirty, dude. I mean, I've heard it all everywhere, even in, I live in Tulare County right now, but even in Fresno, there's, it's rumored that the police chief may have killed one of his own, not far from his house, so, and then there's also, what was the other guy that was killed in the prison before that they had thought he was Andreas Straussmer because he was going into Mexico, Cash, isn't it Cash's brother? Or no, that Cash is a researcher at OKC. Who's the one that's the brother ended up being a researcher?
Oh my God. I should know these names, but it's been a long time since I talked about it. There's Terrence Yeeke is one of the big names. Kenneth Trenadu is the other one.
Exactly.
Trenadu. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, Kenneth Trenadu, he died in prison and stuff. And then people will say, oh, no, because because it was the police and, they were involved and, and he knew and they killed him. I'm like, no. I mean, that guy was a bit of a troublemaker, he probably, got beat up and beaten to death, and that is what happened. But it's not to say that, Trinidu's, his brother isn't at least righteous or on the right path, trying to find out like, hey, why did you guys even fuck up in the first place? Singling out my brother, or what's really wrong with this crime? He didn't stay just, fixated on his brother's crime. He got to the whole point of like, hey, wait a minute, this, it's his community still, So, I mean, he did a lot of good research, believe it or not. I think, but I don't think it's like with the FBI knowing and all that. But then that goes back to Carol Howe. Carol Howe tipped everybody. She told them all that, shit's gonna go down. So we know that's how they got tipped, And then then that goes back all the way back to Elohim City, and that goes back to Andrea Straussberg and all that. Yeah, I believe the whole Lady Godiva thing, but people say it was also Hussein al-Husseini's there too. So what's the whole story there? And it's like I have to tell people, look, despite her narrative, despite what she says, read Jana Davis's book, The Third Terrorist. I've read that book. I took a lot of notes on that book. She brings up a lot of important things, but she's not nuanced on this stuff. She doesn't understand the Middle East. And then not to top it all off, one of her main researchers, he's an Israeli, Yusuf Bodansky. So of course she's going to get a limited narrative. Yeah. But what does she know? I mean, so it's like she even brings up like from the way I take it, like the Iraqi involved, those are defectors. Those are anti-Saddam people. They would love more than anything for this bombing to get blamed on Iraq. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of this purpose of us for. It's what 9/11 was also for. That's what 1993 was for. And I'm not saying the American government or the way that they're shaping it. I'm talking about the actual conspirators. They don't like Saddam either. Right. They're all, look, Ramzi Youssef, when he did his speeches in court, he was just like, he's like, you guys destroy and bomb the innocent people, but you don't go after the leaders. Why don't you? He says this, about, Saddam gassing his people, and even Gaddafi. Mm-hmm.
That always seems to be the people that it falls on, is that they always slaughter the civilians, conveniently never the leaders, but always the civilians.
Yeah.
So moving on, well, how does I don't think we really touched on the World Trade Center bombing. We did a lot on OKC. So what's important to know about the World Trade Center bombing leading up to 9/11? Why that should be included as well?
The most important thing to know is El Said Noser. Mm-hmm. And the most other important thing to know is that you can arrange these things even from prison. Mm-hmm. Terrorism can be arranged, can be contracted through prison. It still happens, and there's a big problem with that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the situation. Well, I think the most important thing also to know is, to know about the assassination of Rabbi Meir Kahane, which was what El Said Noser did. He killed him in 1990 and he went to jail, but he was still arranging a plot, all these plots to eventually strike the Twin Towers. And he was doing other plots too, to bomb, bomb buildings and stuff. And he was trying to arrange them to break him out of prison too. Mm-hmm. So, and that's always a big thing of any terrorist. It's always about, also to break into prisons and, release their heroes and stuff like that. Right. That's important to know. Besides, there is a claim that one of the apartments used, that there was a Mossad asset that lived in the apartment, and that was reported on. But I also think that may be faulty reporting. And if that is a person, that actually might be an Arab Jew who is disguised as a fundamentalist, as a Palestinian probably, and it's supposed to be a female. Her name was Josie Hadass, and that's also important. But what's also more important, going back to prison still, is that Ahmed Ajaj was reported to be a Mossad asset, and he told Ramzi how to build the bomb. Ramzi and this guy Ajaj, they both came into the United States together in 1992. When they showed up at the airport, they went in separate lines, pretending like they weren't with each other. But they both all went there with sloppy fake IDs. But Zsaja's was even worse because he was carrying all the bomb manuals. He was carrying videotapes on making bombs, all kinds of stuff. He had a manual that was called The Base, which Al Qaeda is called The Base, right? But Zsaj is not even a fundamentalist. He's part of Fatah. He's part of the Palestinian terror groups and stuff, And he hadn't even been over to Afghanistan. He never even went. There's some claims that they say he did. No, he didn't. He never did. There's no record of him going over there. In fact, it has the 1993 World Trade Center bombing has as far as the people involved, there's only one guy that went to Afghanistan of everybody there. Most of those people were all Palestinian. They were all part of, Palestinian cause. That's what they were for. And this guy Zsaj that went with Ramzi Youssef, he ends up going to jail into INS prison because he had all this fake stuff. But Ramzi, even though he had a fake Iraqi passport, they let him in. He was supposed to come back to court, but of course he didn't. And he went around New York telling everybody his name was Rashid and he was Iraqi. And there is an Iraqi dupe involved in the conspiracy. There was one that was used. So like I said, they were really trying to, especially after the Gulf War and all that stuff, So this was all intended for obviously even for what the U.S. regime change wants. That's what's ironic.
Yeah, well, wasn't Bill Clinton bombing Iraq back in the 90s anyways?
Yeah, throughout the whole time. I mean, Clinton was only in office for what, a month? Yeah, exactly a month when 1993 happened. So, and then afterwards, obviously with Iraq, bombing the UN, the weapons inspections, all that stuff going on and on and on. Yeah, people got poor. I mean, there were people starving. You've seen the whole thing with Madam Half-Bright. Albright. I picked that up from somebody before, but yeah, somebody calls him Half-Bright. Yeah, Madam Albright. You remember the response she gave. Yep. So and that's and that's the other thing too. It's like even when they want to do the inside job and blame the U.S. government, it's like they only blame it on Bush, and it's just like, dude, that whole system of terror was already on Clinton's watch. I mean, let's not even forget the downing of TWA 800 in 1996, 97. It was 96, yeah, 1996. They never got to the bottom of that, and everybody saw it get shot down. And they said it was felt, unprovable faulty problem. And then there's all kinds of Middle Eastern reasons. I mean, I don't say reasons, but there's all kinds of conflict going on in the Middle East, even in through Africa, that linked that to that possibility. Like an Algerian that died on the plane, that was very wealthy, and his IDs and his credit cards were still used, and he was still he was Algerian. And he even had an associate of his that had died in a plane wreck a week before. So people don't even look at that at all. And and at that time, there was the Algerian conflict going on where the hardliners took over and all that. And that's also very, very important. That ties in with a lot of with Morocco. And, the other thing, too, is throughout that period, and I do believe this, and I can't prove it, but if the U.S. was protecting Al-Qaeda, which it seems like they were for lots of points, they were definitely using it to take down Saddam and to try to take down Gaddafi. Because when you look at the territory of these countries, when you look at where all the conflict going on, I mean, look, and I point this out in one of my films, Gaddafi put out the first arrest warrant on Osama bin Laden in 1990 for an incident in 1994, And then only 2 months later, then the U.S. says, "Oh, we put an arrest warrant on Osama for the embassy bombings." Oh, really? Something's wrong. Something's wrong with that. I mean, you can see there's reports even from the UK that that of MI6 protecting Al Qaeda living there because they're Libyan ones. Libyan hardliners too. Because they already have all these plots that are going to frame. They're going to frame Libya. So. It's no wonder that even though after 9/11 and Gaddafi was very, very helpful after 9/11 and all that stuff, the U.S. was still going to go after him. I mean, it was And they did. Not the way that they probably wanted to, but it happened.
Right. So reading some of these, by the 1980s, Black and Islamic extremists were effectively recruiting and organizing from prison networks. That kind of goes to your point earlier about how they were organizing all these terror plots in prison. Ajax was a petty crook that got flipped by Israelis in prison. He was Yusuf's bomb teacher.
Ajaj. You meant Ajaj. That's not Ajaj.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that actually. Abdul Yassin was a dupe who got suckered into the 1993 plot. He was conveniently ethnic Iraqi.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then during the 80s, Saddam was still useful. The Americans blamed Gaddafi for everything, just like they would do later with Saddam. Yeah, it's funny because Gaddafi must go was the famous saying. And then, he
was my first villain. That was my first villain growing up. In 1979, 1980, I was like, what, kindergartner. So I heard hostage all the time on the news. I'm like, it got on my nerves one time. I'm like, what the fuck is this goddamn word? I had to have my parents try to explain it, and they didn't even do a very good job. And so it's like, I didn't have an Arab villain to look at. But then Gaddafi came. It was this Arab villain that it temporarily existed, And I remember, the LaBelle discotheque bombing in junior high. I'm not even sure you were born then. You were
94.
94. Okay, yeah. So you weren't born. So this is 1986. I'm in junior high school. So it's like I remember that. It's like I tell people, like it's funny. I can remember the LaBelle discotheque bombing, but I don't even remember the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. I don't remember it really. I kind of saw it on the news, but I didn't understand what it was. You see smoke coming from above, but I didn't understand it was under the two tall buildings. It's like, I just didn't see no much coverage on that. But LaBelle discotheque bombing, yeah, it's like then we started. We had that bombing, and we had posters of Gaddafi, as a target, to throw darts at or shoot at.
Yeah.
They were selling all this stuff, and it's just like. And then he disappeared, and then it became Saddam a few years later,
Yeah, so...
And I remember that vividly. Yeah.
Conrail said, I learned about Abdul Hakim Murad being here in the U.S. in prison for life after he was turned over by the Philippines. I hope
after he was arrested.
Yeah, after he was arrested, he was part of the Bojinka plot. Okay, so your second film, I believe, tackled the Bojinka plot. It was the second or third.
Yeah.
Go into that a little bit. I think I talked to Adam about this before, but go ahead, kind of dive in on that a little bit.
Well, when Ramzi Youssef fled the country right after the bombing, he left with another Jordanian, Palestinian descent. Oh my God, what's his name? Why am I spacing out? Iyad Ishmael. That's right. Mm-hmm. Sorry to forget.
Oh, that's good.
But. He was basically Ramzi Youssef they went back, and he actually went back to Jordan first, and then from Jordan, then Ramzi went back home to Pakistan, and from that point, he was already basically a fugitive for 2 years, at least a fugitive to the United States. Mm. So he gets hired, he gets contracted by some Pakistani fundamentalist group, Sapi Yab, I forget how to pronounce the name. And he was contracted to try to assassinate Benazir Bhutto, and that failed. So he fled the country and tried to arrange a bombing for a U.S. embassy or Israeli embassy in Bangkok, and that failed because basically somebody was driving the truck, and they ended up getting into a car wreck, and then they fled, and then the authorities found all that stuff, and. Other things went on, like I guess they say that Ramzi and other family members even put a bomb in the Mashhad, which in Iran, it was called the Mashhad bombing. It's a shrine for one of the prophets. It's a big, great holy place, but it actually killed about 30 people, believe it or not. It was actually his most deadliest attack. Mm-hmm. It was in Iran. So after all of that, and that's like already a year and a half of him doing all these things, he winds back in the Philippines, and he may have reports also say he had been there before already. Mm-hmm. But by this point, this was 1994, he's already back in the Philippines, He's hooking up with Abdul Hakim Murad, one of his longtime friends. Uncle KSM is there too, living in another apartment across the way. And there was also Amin. His name was Shah. I forget, it was Wali Amin Shah. That was another one that was involved. They let him free already because he's been cooperative. They were all there basically, and they were building bombs and they were testing them out. They had tested out some in theaters in the Philippines, and Ramsey went and put a bomb on a Japanese airliner. A Philippine. Sorry, was it Philippines or Japanese? It was going to Japan, but it blew up and only killed one passenger, and the plane luckily was able to make its way and land. And they basically figured out, putting pieces, the authorities figured out who it was, and they ended up. I guess they had enough of the pieces. They ended up finding out who they were basically, because then while they were building more bombs to make for the Bojinka plot, which was this plot that we're going to do, where they were going to bomb 12 airliners simultaneously, leaving from the Pacific Islands, heading to the U.S. Some cases even planes in the continental U.S. heading to the Pacific Islanders. They were going to bomb at least a dozen of them, but most of them were going to be from the Pacific Islanders. And that's what they were doing. They're building these bombs, and then they fucked up on building the bombs. And this happened with Ramsey back in New York too, when he was twisting out bombs. One of the guys, the Iraqi, got burned. They left all kinds of damage in the apartment in New York too. So they weren't very good at doing this stuff. But in the Philippines, they really fucked up, and it created a small little apartment fire, and they all fled. So the Philippine police, the firemen, they all got there. They extinguished the blaze. They basically investigating the thing. But then Ramsey sent Abdul to go back into the apartment to get his laptop, because his laptop had the plans and everything for the Bojinka plot. So when Abdul went there to try to retrieve it, he ended up getting caught by the authorities, and he leaked out everything. By that point, Ramsey, KSM, they all fled. Ramsey went back to basically back to Thailand for a little while. He was still going to try to keep the plot going, but failed at that. So then he went back into Pakistan, and with the guy that was left over that was trying to retrieve the laptop. Yeah, he revealed everything. He said that they already have operatives ready in the U.S. to fly planes too. So it wasn't. So they tell us it was bombings and stuff, but there's reason to believe that there was going to be a combination of some planes even being hijacked with operatives that knew how to fly planes already. Because even Hani Hanjour, he'd already been living in the U.S. Already at that point, still in 1995. So basically, Ramsey ends up getting caught. Eventually in Pakistan, like a month later. But here's the interesting thing. A lot of people don't know this, and it's in my film. KSM, when they went to go search his place, they found evidence that he had traveled to the U.S., which is no big deal. He went to college in 1985 to North Carolina. But they also found out that KSM had traveled to Israel. That's pretty odd.
Right.
And even in later discovery, which doesn't make sense either, even while in the Philippines, KSM liked to celebrate the anniversary of the Pan Am 103 bombing. The bombing of Pan Am 103 was blamed on Gaddafi in Libya. So why is this guy celebrating the bombing of Pan Am 103? So, it's a whole other thing. But and they caught Ramsey in Pakistan, and he extradited him, and it was a big ordeal for Benazir Bhutto to do that, because she had hardliners against her. They didn't want him to do that, and she okayed it. And Pakistan has not even really been the most helpful for us when it comes to extraditing, or allowing us to capture the terrorists. I mean, They had Ramsey there. There was another guy that, I believe it or not, I should have mentioned this, but a month before the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, another Pakistani went up and shot the CIA headquarters, killed three CIA. Yeah, you know, and that guy was linked to Ramsey, believe it or not. He was in the country already before, and he had left already a month before. He'd actually ended up even being in at like the same time when Ramsey went to try to blow up the U.S. embassy in Bangkok. This other guy that did the CIA shooting, he was in the country at the same time too. They had want ad. The U.S. put want ads for both of them. I have it. I have the actual want ads of it. And so basically with Pakistan, they were really even reluctant to even give us the identity or being able to trace this guy that shot up the CIA. Same thing goes with Ramsey. And then look what happens after 9/11. All of them were there. I mean, KSM's there for over a year. They capture him there. Bin Laden ended up being there. They didn't tell us. And then lo and behold, the last one is Ayman al-Zawahiri. He was still there. I'm like, what the fuck? Why are we in business with it? Why are we, should we putting sanctions on these people or something? I mean, I would think that would be a normal reaction. I mean,
yeah, I mean, when they did stuff like that, they did, then, I mean, you got to do some kind of action. And people always kind of knocked Ron Paul for voting for the 2001 authorized use of military force. But my understanding is that his explanation of that was always that, like, hey, I thought we were just going in to get the people that attacked us. Didn't know that it was going to turn into, a 20-year
There was nothing wrong with him doing that. That was a natural reaction. Can you imagine if he would have said no? Can you imagine? I mean, how much trouble he would have gotten in? I mean, there was only one person. Was it Barbara Boxer that didn't okay it? Right, Democrat from California, right?
I thought
not Barbara Boxer. Is it Barbara Lee?
It might have been, but I thought Jimmy Duncan. It might have been for the invasion of Iraq, because initially the AUMF was for Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
The authorized use of military force was for Afghanistan, and then for the invasion of Iraq, Jimmy Duncan voted against it. Ron Paul, I believe, voted against it.
Yeah,
and then I'm guessing probably Barbara Lee voted
against
it.
Yeah, Barbara Lee, and then other people started like, whoa, we're not going over there.
Yeah, Cindy. Oh, what the hell's her name? She's real Cynthia McKinney. That was it.
Yeah,
she's a really, really good Democrat.
Let
me breeze through some of these real quick. I saw the documentary on. No, we already read that one. 9/11 masterminds traveled to Israel. See, and this kind of goes to the point of why I get why people freak out about the Israel angle. But I think Sean and I talked about this last time he was on. Is that, like, there's no definitive link that says Israel's pulling the strings on all this. Like, there's definitely an Israel angle to it, and say there isn't is disingenuous, but to say, these angles means Israel did the whole thing just is incomplete. And like you said, it's because there were so many steps beforehand that didn't have an Israel angle to them.
But you tell you what, you can blame them for allowing these masterminds and keeping them and protecting them. They may not be seeing all the plans being done. But the fact that they're protecting them for even in decades in some cases, that's a problem. Right. It's like, and it's like, you're allowing your own people to get, become victimized too. And like, it's like the people that, you think the Israelis would do something about it, but they don't. So.
Right. Very interesting about not Qasem Soleimani. KSM, I never knew. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, that's it. I never knew. For all we knew, Osama could have done something similar before it came public enemy. Yeah, that's true too. Difference between the guys at the top of 9/11 is one has a detailed story, the other we almost know nothing concrete about. If you want to elaborate on Sean's comment there.
What did he say?
Yeah, the difference between the guys at the top of 9/11 is one has detailed history and the other we know almost nothing concrete about.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't necessarily say about the one we don't know concrete about, and because if I start saying that to people are like, huh, where is he going? It's like, yeah, we only know so much about bin Laden, but bin Laden's a newbie in the world of terrorism, and he's not really a terrorist. He's a financier. He's like, he wasn't even very good as far as leading his own brigade in the Afghan-Russian war. He
wasn't
failed
he
it.
the one wasn't he the one writing the love novel? It was one of them, Osama bin Laden and not Muammar Gaddafi. Oh my God, I can't believe it's Osama bin Laden. But yeah, one of them was writing like a love novel or something like that. It was something ridiculous.
I don't know about that.
Not who were the? It was Osama bin Laden and oh my God, I can't believe I'm slipping on the names. Oh my God, Osama.
I've never heard about a love novel.
Novel. Let me see Bin Laden's bookshelf. No. Who? It was one of the big names in the Middle East, not Osama bin Laden. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm slipping on it. One of them was writing. I can't believe I can't fucking think of the name. Oh, that's gonna drive me nuts.
Is he an author, or is he a Muslim, or?
He was one of the big Muslim terrorists that everyone was freaking out about, and he literally he was writing a love novel. Oh my God, I can't believe.
There's not very many.
Roll through some of the names. See, I'll see if it clicks. So there was not Muammar Gaddafi. It wasn't Osama bin Laden.
It's not Arafat. It's not.
No.
Carlos the Jackal.
No.
No, it's not. He
God.
wrote books too, but
Hamas or Hezbollah. Was it the founder of Hamas or Hezbollah? No, I don't think it was. Oh my God, this is gonna drive me nuts.
No, I'm curious now.
Terrorist love novel. Terrorist no. Islamic radicals. Oh my God, who was one of the big names in Arab terrorism back in the early 2000s was literally writing a love novel. Oh my God, this is gonna bother me so fucking bad.
The 2000s. Oh, you're talking about not Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
No, it was a big name. I can't. It should be like right there, but I can't think of who it was. Leaders of Middle Eastern countries.
It's not Ayman al-Zawahiri. It's not.
Salman. Ehud Barak, no. Ariel Sharon, no. That's Israel. Qatar. Zaik Shaid. Oh my God, this is gonna fucking drive me absolutely crazy. Lebanon, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, no. Oh, no. Bashar al-Assad, no. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. It wasn't. I wanted to say it was Osama bin Laden, but that doesn't sound right. Osama bin Laden novel.
I'm trying to think of any clerics. It's just like.
Oh my God, people are gonna kill me because I've been sitting here for like the last couple of minutes.
Oh, wait a minute. Hekmatar? Is it from Pakistan? No.
Who was the Bin Laden Papers? Maybe I made this whole fucking thing up. I don't think I did though, because I remember Scott Horton talking about this. So it was Osama bin Laden. Who was the other one? There was another big leader that everybody was looking for. Oh my God, I should know this.
I can't. I should have been. I can't think of.
Yeah. Jiladin Haqqani, no. From what I saw, Bin Laden's. Was it? No. Was it Bin Laden? Yeah, we're way out in left field now. All right, so you know what? Well, we'll move on from there. If I remember it, I'll try to bring it up again.
Sure.
So maybe we could wrap on like why you thought Ron Paul was so important to the 9/11 movement, and I I remember in your documentary, you kind of detailed a clip of him almost like disavowing InfoWars. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, you mean well, at first, like in 2008, like when he was asked by Carl Cameron all that,
Yeah.
yeah, I was a little bit disappointed, but the thing at that point is that I had the wrong idea of who was behind 9/11. Now I understand why he said that, and plus I didn't even know about even the Fox News spy ring thing. That was the newscaster that did the whole special, all that. It's like when you got into 9/11 truth in the early years, it took a couple of years until you'd finally come across the dancing Israelis. Everything was just all that was buried. It was just like, look at this photo, look at this photo. Just completely, graphics. And that's what people, it just becomes a whole graphic thing, and so it's like when I saw that, I'm like, I was kind of bummed, but it was like, you know what, it didn't matter. He didn't want to support these wars. He didn't like, the Patriot Act and all the other things that have been put upon us as a result of that. And I'm like, that's good enough. I can get behind a person like that.
Right. Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I literally just figured it out. I can't believe I
that's how it usually is. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. No, Saddam Hussein had love novels. That was it.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably true.
No, I mean, it's a literal thing here. You know what? I'll show it real quick just for people.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe it took me so long. Well, just for the audience. Yeah, Saddam Hussein romance novel. Zabiba and the King is a romance novel written and published anonymously in Iraq 2000 that was written by Saddam Hussein. Okay, I'm so sorry. I just had to get that. It was driving me nuts. I knew it was somebody like huge. This should be super obvious who it was. And then
who the Arab villain was, yeah. You're looking for the right Arab villain. Not the right, yeah. No, okay. Totally.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, yeah. Scott Horton said that once, and then I'm like, "What, really?" And I looked it up. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." Okay, so you were at Ron Paul, and at the time, you didn't understand who did 9/11.
Yeah, I had the USA did it, the inside job, and that's when he got questioned, But then, by the time the 2012 came around, I already knew Wise Enough, and all that needed to be said, back then. And I ended up, I would think I may have known that he had put it out. He had said it, but then I realized, oh yeah, he was definitely, we'll put it this way, that the 9/11 truth movement's already misled. Here they are, they think, oh, look, the Mossad's involved. Well, did you know there's like Mossad asset involvement in the first attack? Well, obviously Ron Paul knew that. And he was already being, they're already trying to ridicule him again in 2012 over his newsletter. And
the racist newsletters.
Yeah. And so basically, there's that reference there, and that tells you everything. It's just like, had the truth movement been more realistic as far as like who they were going after, instead of this Alex Jones's and self-inflicted wound theory, then perhaps he may have been more forthcoming about certain things. But I also know that, like before the 2012 election, one of the girls that was part of our We Are Change LA chapter, she confronted Ron Paul on video camera and microphone at a speech in Las Vegas. And she asked him, like, she asked two questions. One was about the Federal Reserve. And the second question that she asked Ron Paul was, why can't you talk about the truth about 9/11? And you've seen that interview. You've seen that, I'm sure, right?
I don't think I have, to be completely honest.
I'll send it to you. And he was just like, I can't, because it's just too controversial. It's just there's just too much, and I just got to leave it at that, and I'm like, that's pretty fair. I'm like, okay. And then he knows something's wrong. He knows that there's anomalies and stuff. But once I started reading like Michael Collins Piper, especially the Judas Goats, like, boy, did I learn a lot. And I'm like, oh, that's basically the kind of stuff that Ron Paul was basically into, and basically the kind of stuff his newsletter was covering back then. Sure. So it makes sense he gave the answers he did, because nobody asked the right question. They asked, that's why.
Yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So you know what? I know you and Sean are busy working on a little project together. Why don't you let everybody know where they could support you, check out your films and all that good stuff, and give your plugs and let everybody know how they could support you.
Well, you can watch my my YouTube channels. The main one used to be called Truther TV. I got rid of it. I don't want to really associate to the word truther. So now it's called 9/11 True Crimes. Believe it or not, I'm one of the few channels that can stay on there, even though I cover Mossad and stuff like that. I do it very carefully, and so that's the reason why I'm around, and also because I don't do podcasting. I don't show my face, and I don't I'm not a news source. I shouldn't be coming up every day and just expressing my feelings. I don't feel that I'm qualified for that. I got into this because of 9/11. I've committed myself on that subject, and the things that are related to it. So you can check out my 9/11 True Crimes channel. I do have a Rumble. I do have an Odyssey named right after that. I do have a BitChute that's named after my DJ name. You can find me as Thermal Detonator or DJ Thermal Detonator as well. I also have a blog. You can see it on the YouTube bar. It's called 9/11 Skeptics versus Truth. And I don't write a whole lot, but I did put up something very recently, like last week actually. And that's the other way to support me. Checking out what's available, and until I get my subscriber thing for YouTube, because they allowed me to get monetization now, but I've got a lot of like copyright blocks with certain things. But I'm supposed to be able to allow the subscription so people can see my stuff. But the real way to do it, to support me now and to see a lot more stuff that I don't put public, is through Patreon. So you can find that there, under DJ Thermal Detonator or 9/11 True Crimes. You'll find me there, or on the bar, and you can just join for $1, and you can see most of the stuff that I have. I do have some stuff even as a digital shop thing. You can just, if you don't want to be a subscriber and you want to see some of the rare stuff I have, you can also do a purchase that way too. And God, what else do I have? That's basically it. But I mean, as far as my other endeavor that I'm working on right now, is basically going to be a short film that's basically going to be a way, also as a means for us to support a book that we're working on right now. And that book is about Nick Berg. Now, who is Nick Berg? Maybe a lot of you don't remember. Nick Berg was that guy that was the first guy that was beheaded in Iraq in 2004. And there was a bit of a, I don't want to say a cover up, because the information a little bit was already out there, but nobody bothered to put 2 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. And Nick Berg, his last name should imply his ethnicity or his background, his religious background, if you don't know. But Nick Berg was investigated by the FBI after 9/11. And the reason why is because Zacharias Moussaoui had his email or his password, basically through another roommate. And this is during a time in Oklahoma, and this is in 2001, obviously. Now Nick Berg did go to Oklahoma in like 1998, 1999, but he wasn't a student at the time in 2001, and he was hanging out in Oklahoma for some reason. Why did he have why did Zacharias Moussaoui have Nick Berg's email, and then end up being beheaded in Iraq, 3 years later? And he was going there to strike it rich, start a telecommunications company. Hint, 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 people. Those that are familiar with Mossad roles in 9/11. I cannot explain more, because there's so much more of the story. There's issues regarding his business partners, and a lot more, especially as him as a kid. And basically the book gives an explanation as to why he was likely killed. And
Right.
it's going to be a very dark conclusion, but it's more plausible than anything else that people try to come up with, because he had there was the beheading video that was released, and all the kooks jumped on the bandwagon trying to say, oh, it's a fake video, so they weren't looking at the whole Zacharias Moussaoui thing.
Right. Well, you know what? I talked to Sean about this very, very briefly, and you know what? I'm excited for you guys to put out this project because it's a fascinating angle I've never heard anybody bring up. So yeah, make sure everybody go check out DJ Thermal Detonator stuff as well as Sean Russell stuff. I don't want you guys to give everything away because I want to have you guys on together to talk about this because I think it's gonna be a really, really cool show.
Yeah. Definitely once we get a book completely printed. Yeah. There's a lot that we just don't talk about. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot. There's a lot. And, Sean was the perfect person to bring on to this because he understood exactly where it was going with all this. So, right. It covers a lot of other areas too. I mean, we talked a lot about Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, despite that he wasn't the guy that beheaded him. He wasn't the one that beheaded him. But we already found out. It was already out there. The information's out there, but nobody looks for it. But it is tied to his organization, sure. But there's a whole other meaning to that because look what happens. That guy is the father of ISIS. And Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, he was all connected to the Hamburg cell. And Muhammad Atta's recruiter, the heavyset Moroccan guy, his name is Mohammed Haydar Zamar. He escaped. He left right after 9/11. He left Germany, went to Morocco. Then he got caught by the authorities there, held him in jail, and then they did a trade switch with Syria. So they sent him back into prison to Syria. So he was there for 10 years. Something happened there, and they did a trade with somebody else because the fundamentalists, Syrian Muslim Brotherhood, had somebody that the Syrians wanted. So they did, and then Haydar Zamar ended up being got free. And what was Haydar Zamar doing? Hanging out with ISIS, taking pictures of him. So one of the, I'm not saying this is going to be put in the book. It's not. But I'm just trying to tell people out there, the 9/11 attacks actually may have been carried out as some sort of conglomerate of both ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because they are very different organizations, very different. I mean, they strike differently. I mean, ISIS, remember, they're going out, they allowed alcohol, they were drinking, there was all kinds of, Salafist, basically, nothing like what the people closer to bin Laden were like. So that's what that's one of the things that I hope readers will also understand, because all those things, all the terrorist acts that end up happening in Europe and the Middle East right after 9/11, they're all tied up to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Or they have a link to him, not to saying that he was a mastermind, but the U.S. propped them up as one as part of the Iraq pretext. They put it was talking about anthrax and Zarqawi. Those were the two things, anthrax and Zarqawi, because they're trying to make it appear that Zarqawi was basically being funded and helped and aided by Saddam, which he was not. So, yeah.
Well, you know what? I got to get our mutual friend Robbie Martin on to talk about the anthrax bombings, and he has a lot of really interesting takes on a lot of stuff. You know, Nelson, you are a wealth of information on this stuff. As I tell you, Sean, and Adam, I usually have to go back and listen to these shows over again because there's just so much information, and I do my best to retain it. But like I said, you guys, it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant because you guys are just so well equipped for this kind of stuff, and I only aspire to be that knowledgeable about the areas of expertise of which I try to practice in. So one more time, let everybody know real quick where they can find you, and we'll close her out.
Yeah. Oh, just find me on YouTube and Patreon. That's where I'm at.
Beautiful. All right, Nelson. And one more time, it's DJ Thermal Detonator. All his links are below in his little, I think it's allmylinks.com. And,
yeah, I have one of those,
yeah, go check all that stuff out, especially if you're curious about 9/11. And he will definitely be back on again sometime in the future with our dear friend Sean Russell. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And until next time, take care.